So I ended my last lecture discussing the power and the development of the Roman army. And with an army, you usually have wars. The Punic Wars were kind of a fundamental element of so many aspects in ancient Roman history. There was a constant conflict, and it would be heavily influential on the way that the Romans would view themselves. So we had Rome versus Carthage from 264 BCE to 146. Punic comes from the Latin, and it means Phoenician. Okay, so in Carthage, that was a colony in northern Africa of Phoenicians coming from the Levant near what is now Lebanon. Okay. In the first war, Rome gains Sicily. Within 3 years, Rome took Sardinia and Corsica. Rome designated as provinces not directly subject to the Senate in Rome. So there was a fighting for power of influence by these two powers. Okay. And who were those people? So again, the Phoenicians are the Carthaginians. They were Phoenicians, and I have a Lebanese stamp, okay, and it has Arabic here, Lebanon, Lebanon, some French as well. The French colonized Lebanon as well. Here's the Phoenician script. So we have an ancient Semitic civilization that's centered on the coastline of modern Lebanon, maritime trading culture thought to have originated from the earlier Canaanite inhabitants. Phoenicia is really a classical Greek term to mean Canaanite port towns. Okay, and so the Phoenician alphabet is generally believed to be the ancestor of almost all of our modern alphabets. So it's just something I kind of wanted to make sure I pointed out here for world history and who these enemies are. And when people fight, it doesn't mean that they don't influence each other in some ways. It's usually the exact opposite. In any case, and Carthage is, by the way, Tunisia. Okay, that's where it's located. Established a hegemony over other Phoenician settlements throughout the Mediterranean, North Africa, and what is now Spain. The religion was based on Phoenician religion, a form of polytheism. They battled with the indigenous Berber peoples. They were accused of child sacrifice. Some argue that was propaganda against them, and I do not have a conclusion that I've made about this, but they were accused of child sacrifice. Records of their civilization were destroyed by the Romans, and so it's going to be a debate, I suppose. One of the goddesses was Tanit, lunar goddess, worshipped as the patron goddess at Carthage and in Numidia. That's a little bit on the culture they're fighting. Actually, I want to go next one. So the Second Punic War started by Carthaginian Hannibal. Hannibal is a name that you will hear often in many parts of the world. He was the main nuisance to the Romans, but he fought a pretty hard and heroic war and is kind of symbolic of resistance to the Romans and maybe even to the West in general now. But he's considered one of the greatest military commanders in history. He marched his army, which included war elephants, from Iberia, which is now Spain, over the Pyrenees and the Alps into northern Italy. And this is what he's really kind of famous for. So you look at what he did. He comes here from Carthage in North Africa, gets through Spain, and then cuts through the Pyrenees mountains with elephants. And he gets into northern Italy and does a surprise attack because no one expects him to coming over the mountains with a bunch of elephants. How do you do that? And we're talking about steep mountains, not an easy trek, and it was not. He occupied much of Italy for 15 years, but a Roman counter-invasion of North Africa forced him back to Carthage. He was defeated by Scipio Africanus and at the Battle of Zama. And just to say on this one point here, shortly before Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in the modern times, okay, Mussolini commissioned an epic film depicting the exploits of Scipio, and he had this film that was celebrated, in 1937. So this ancient history of the Romans and a battle with the Africans then are kind of brought into modern times. The reason why the Roman was named Africanus is implying his conquest of Africa, okay, or the northern part, meaning the Carthaginians, okay. Here's a depiction in Tunisia now of Hannibal, and here's a picture kind of depicting of what it would have been like going over the Alps with war elephants. In any case, there's another Punic War, and it's smaller an engagement than the two previous, and it's focused mainly on the siege of Carthage. Here we see the complete destruction of the city and the annexation of it by Rome. And so in this long-standing battle, Rome gets the upper hand, and there will be a genocide. Okay? And genocide was not politically incorrect. Back in the ancient world, it was something that you did to win respect if you're going to try to be a world leader, sadly. So here's a map kind of showing the world at this time. And I just want you to take a look at that, and then I'm going to move to the next one. Pardon my nose again. Changes in Roman society and culture. So there were economic gaps, for sure. That seems to be the case in almost all pockets of human history. But women did gain a certain elevation of status that should be noted compared to times before. But what we also then see is after the Third Punic War, larger amounts of foreign slaves, so a kind of glut of slavery. And there was a famous gladiator slave named Spartacus, which you may have seen in one of the old movies about, where more than 70,000 slaves revolted for 2 years, but it was ended in 71 BCE. Slave revolts have happened in all history. The one successful one that we can note is the Haitian Revolution, which is for another topic, but that's the only slave revolt that I believe was ever successful. In any case, after mentioning the end of the Punic Wars, there was a shift again in Rome's culture. There was social discontent, the issues of the countryside and urban elites and agriculture. And this is so typical. I mean, even on a light level, you take the issue of country folk versus city urban folk, right? The countryside's a tad more conservative. There's those urban elites that are seen as kind of like elites, haughty-dotty, liberal types that, look at the world in a very different way. But it gets more extreme when wealth disparity is very wide. And I'm going to stop right here, and then I'm going to get to talking about the first triumvirate and Julius Caesar.